webinar is basically on banking and finance. And interestingly, we don't have people who are really specific audience for one domain in this case. And the reason is that it is such an area that there can be lots of people who can find this relevant and who can really be interested in it, right? So we can have lawyers, people who are already litigators or who are already involved with some degree of the work, who are looking to get an understanding of the finance related domains so they can serve their banks or NBFC clients better. People who are looking to get into the domain, right? So people who are in the legal field but do not have access to or do not have clients who are into this domain, but who are looking to diversify and add an element to their practice. There are many finance professionals. Okay, there can be people who are recovery agents, there can be people who are registered valuers, there can be people who are working with the banks who are finance professionals, who want to get diversified understanding of different things. So half of the section is such who gets the finance part and wants really to dive deep and understand the legal part. One part of the section is are the people who understand the legal part and really want to dive into and understand the finance part, right? On top of that, there are business owners, okay, who really want to understand that what are the kinds of facilities, like what are the different things that I can avail of, what are the terms that I'm being given. Okay, so the crowd for this webinar is kind of multifarious. Okay, and there can be lots of people who look to gain a better understanding only of their relationship with the banks and thereby increase their income or their terms in some way, better their terms in some way, in order to in order to add some element to their practice, or in order to be able to deal with the negotiations a little bit better. So the crowd for this webinar is really very wide. Okay, so that's who this webinar is for. If we take and move a little bit forward with this diverse crowd, the way we work is that uh, why would someone want to look into banking and finance as an area? Okay, so one very clear reason is that it's an area which never dries up, right? So you can always shift gears from one section of that area to another. So if you are, for example, in the sphere of in the legal sphere, and you are able to understand the contracts, agreements very well, you are able to understand the law very well, you still have issues in trying to understand the finance part of it, right? Or like what exactly is these terms or these real risk related terms or finance related terms that these guys talk about. Sometimes it can become very difficult, so that is something that lawyers can look to gain at. On the other hand, you know if, because this area never dries up, right? So if it's really a booming economy, and you have lots of funding that is flowing into the industry. Okay, when it's a boom, naturally the businesses are up, and the funding is flowing freely in the industry. Then at that point of time, the loans are happening very frequently, therefore there is always work that is related to, let's say, review of the loans, or even financial professionals negotiation of the loans, all of those things. Okay, so that is one part of the thing. Now where the economy is in recession, what happens? And that's the trends that we are going to be experiencing now, like because we can clearly see that we are heading towards a recession, and a bit of a serious, a bit of a big one at that, right? So now in this situation, how does banking and finance become relevant? So the areas simply shifts from the funding and the agreement related aspects to recovery and restructuring. Okay, even as far as the restructuring is concerned, the negotiations, the agreements, everything are as relevant as the funding part is concerned. Similarly, recovery mechanisms, loads of different recovery mechanisms, which one to choose from. Okay, and now naturally, slowly the options are getting eliminated one by one. As we see, IBC got eliminated very recently. uh, the Negotiable Instruments Act is sought to be, like, the bouncing of checks is sought to be decriminalized, so that's getting eliminated. So now, how do I, like, recovery is always a question for the lenders, from a point of view of the lenders. So how does recovery work? And this is just one area of it. Like, I have faced the requirement of this knowledge from the opposite side as well, right? So people who are availing, the borrowers who are availing of the loans, again, when it's a boom economy, really, like, they want to know, which they would be able to kind of, look at different kinds of facilities and want to know which one works out most well for them. Again, they would have to understand the terms of each of the facility for that purpose. Okay, so for them also, it is relevant to know. For business owners, it's relevant to know the terms, relevant to have at least some understanding of this area. They can't go in a phase or in a space where they don't get it at all. Okay, so that is something that becomes relevant for them in a boom. In a recession, there can be a completely different type of problems. Like, I was surprised a little while back to speak to one of the business owners who told me that there were issues with him where the bank had recovered far more than it was due. And now, how does he go about that? Right? So there can be this unique kind of disputes or issues that crop up even in a recovery economy, where there is not so much of funding and debt finance happening at that point of time. Even from the business side, these kind of issues can crop up. That's why this area is omnipresent, and it's like, across different kind of economic cycles, it will still remain relevant. That's one reason why we're talking about, or we are mentioning, or we are discussing banking and finance, right? So if we move a little bit forward, that's the reason why, someone should want to gain or get in that area, because there can be situations that happen. Now, litigation would have been, for example, IBC was incredibly moving some time back. Like, everyone, anyone and everyone that you spoke to wanted to gain the knowledge of IBC, wanted to be practicing before NCLT, wanted to be working in that domain, understanding, become an insolvency professional, understand how resolution plans work. Everyone was in that gear, and people who had or got that, acquired that kind of knowledge, were in, like, a great demand as well, because it was constantly changing sphere, right? So every some period of time, you had a new president and you had a new judgment, and it would change. Okay, but what happened afterwards is that, like, it got suspended for some period of time. Naturally, after that period of time, it is going to crop up, and maybe with double the speed. But like, for a particular period of time where you are working as a litigator only, let's say in the IBC area, then you can be hit. Okay, so that is the situation. So, like, you would want to choose an area which can be that versatile, and which can be remaining in some from or the other relevant, like one section or another, relevant in either of the spheres, in all kinds of situations, in all kind of economic situations, right? So that is something that you really want to gain. Okay, and you want to understand how you can use that knowledge to your benefit. So if you do get this, what is the kind of things, or what would things look like? Okay, for example, if you do acquire, let's say, you have a very clear idea of, contracts that work out in terms of banking, that the agreements that work out in terms of banking, you have a very clear idea of the terms that the bankers use. Most people have this real struggle, and I can, give my own experience in this field. I was working with a bank where I was supposed to sit in a risk committee meeting and understand what were the discussions that were going on. Okay, now, it's, if you think of, what kind of discussions happen in a risk committee in a bank, there can be discussions of risk related scenarios. There can be discussion of risk related weights. There can be discussions of what is the impact, or what is the uh, level of the organization, what's how systemically important that organization is as far as risk is concerned. And I was in one of the organizations which was one of the top six high impact institutions. What do you call a high impact institution? A high impact institution is one where if something happens to that institution, the economy can be affected. Okay, it's that important, or it's that high impact. So there were kind of six high impact institutions, and the institution that I was with was one of them. So therefore, you have to understand these kinds of things. More relevant, it's really relevant, particularly when you are on the inside of the bank or the financial institution, because you may be understanding the business thoroughly well, right? And particularly this is relevant for people who are in the credit risk, like I just mentioned. People who are in the credit risk kind of understand this element very very well. They understand, like the business, they understand all technicalities very well. Okay, but the struggle they have is exactly opposite of what I had. Like, I couldn't understand the terms related to risks. They can't understand the agreements or the legal jargon that happen with particular clients. Now they are supposed to actually, like rate the risk, understand the risk, and do their work like that. But they really really want to gain an understanding of what happens in the financing agreements that are placed before the client. They really want, like, once, see, what happens is that you are in this position, you are in this cryptic position where you have only one part of the puzzle and the other puzzle is not clear to you at all, right? This is what happens if you have, like if you want to have banks as clients, or if you want to be working on the inside of banks as someone in the credit risk, or for that matter someone in the legal department itself. Okay, so if you are in either of these spheres and you really want to gain an understanding, it's you are sitting with one piece of the puzzle and the other piece isn't clear to you at all. Okay, that is why structured knowledge, and that's the reason I put this term inside the topic of this webinar, that structured knowledge of both of these becomes very important for different domains or different spheres of people. Then your puzzle is complete because you can piece the puzzle together, right? So that's the situation. So when you have this knowledge, or when you have this complete understanding, things will become very very effective for you when you are dealing with a specific transaction. If you're serving banks and NBFCs as the clients, if you have a very clear understanding of the law that applies to them, if you have an understanding of the financial transactions or the terms that they use, you have the understanding of that, the finance side of that as well. Okay, then it becomes very clear to you, the route, or the way you want to deal with them becomes very very clear to you. Okay, then you are able to serve them, able to understand their position, or able to understand their point of view. If you are a business owner, if you are very clear with what are the kinds of facilities they can provide, what regulations they are subject to, what are they talking about in the negotiation. Okay, if you are very clear about these things, okay, then naturally you will not take a lower hand in the negotiations. You will understand how to shape the negotiation such that you can take the benefit of it. So that the end of it is that, or the end result of this is that you will be able to piece the puzzle together in all different respects. And this can definitely be financially lucrative for the people, like I said, for people who are in the credit risk. When they understand, they have a very clear understanding of how the transaction is going together, and they can be really really effective when they start to deal with the people in the legal. If they understand how finance transactions work, or how the finance part of it works, that means they can, like, again, really be very effective at the time when they are drafting or reviewing or checking the products for its impacts, right? So it can become a really productive way of working when you have, when you are able to piece the entire puzzle together, right? For business owners, again, naturally, because they'll not take a beating in the negotiations if that they would if they had no clue of what was going on or what kind of discussions are going on, right? So that is something that, it can become lucrative in this manner, that you will very well understand where things are going. Otherwise, most often, like, people have this half part of it, and they are continuously looking for or seeking for what exactly is the other part. Okay, so that is what the end result, or what the end part will look like if you have a knowledge of both the parts of both the sides. And now let me go with some spaces. What stops us, or what makes us think, or what are the kind of feelings that you are in? If you are in the legal domain, like you were like, finances, I don't get it. It's mind boggling. I don't know how these transactions shape from one thing to another. I don't get. And like I said, I shared my feeling that this is what was happening to me exactly in, the risk committee meeting. I didn't get it totally. I didn't get, like, what are the risk scenarios they are talking about. I had no clue of what risk weights are. So these kinds of things were happening with me, and you have this feeling that it's mind boggling, like I'm not going to get it. I can't move into this domain. Same way for the people who are in the risk, like they understand that scenario very well, but they are like, what is all this jargon that is there in the agreement? Okay, and how relevant are these clauses in the agreement to what the bank is doing? Like I have no clue. Like I'm not a legal person. I don't get what is written so much lengthy inside the agreements, and what are these terms that are worded in this heavy manner with, like, one sentence that is lasting something like 3 or 4 lines. Okay, so that is a struggle again that these people will have, that I don't get the legal terms, I don't get the legal jargon, and why do they have to write such complicated contracts in the first place, right? Same way that struggle is there for the business person, that I don't like what these people talk with me about. It kind of seems Greek to me, the kind of language that bankers use when I go to talk with them about, like, my funding or my restructuring or anything. The kind of things they talk about sometimes seem Greek to me. I don't get it. It's very complicated, right? So if people can be in these spaces, and the thing is that you can unlock the other part of the puzzle. You definitely can unlock, and you can get. It's not like because you are working or functioning in a legal domain, and you are in that sphere, like you cannot get finance, or it's something that is very difficult to grasp, or it is very complicated, or it requires, maybe it requires you to go back and study commerce and then do it. It's not like that. Okay, so, and similarly for the finance people, law is not something that is like, which is rocket science, or which is too much jargon and really complicated to understand. Okay, it is possible to get all of that. Okay, you really need to uh, there are some things that we need to do in order to reach this particular domain, but otherwise it is possible to get. It's possible to understand, right? So I would like to know from any of you, if you are facing this kind of spaces, anyone who is in this kind of spaces, who's dealt with banks, or is having these kinds of issues in dealing with banks, or even people who are in the banking domain, who are facing this kind of issues, where they want to understand the law, but it seems complicated. Can any of you share something? I will unmute if you raise your hand. Any of you wants to share something on this? There's a reason why you are in this webinar, right? Aline, is that the correct name? Or Tanvi? Guys, would you like any one of you who would like to share something on their interaction with this area? On their interaction, they're dealing with this specific area in banking and finance. It seems complicated. Does it really give any value? Any kind of feelings that you have. All right, Kaustubh, I'll unmute you. Just one second.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Kaustubh.
So I can give you like first-hand experience in which I had in dealing with the bank when it came to restructuring the loan part. So my client
Sure.
was not able to, means his business was not doing well, and
Yeah.
we wanted to restructure the loan from a credit limit, which it was, to a long
Yeah.
term or yeah. And so the challenges that we faced were, although we had tools at our disposal, legally speaking,
Yeah.
uh, we could not use them because the bankers did not agree to use them. So, for example, if you look at the theory, when you are in a certain beyond a certain stage of distress, you can force the bank to uh, restructure the loan uh, instead of going in for taking over the assets of the client. So in this case, the client is still ready to pay back the loan, but at a lower pace, or how should I say, in an on a longer term, not on the term in which the bank wanted. So the time frame kind of increases. So then, how to make the bank do the legal? So this was one of the big challenges, because most of the time you are dealing with these bank managers and bank officers who are caring about bottom lines, who have their own instructions from the top that they need to meet this. On top of that, they had a lot of pressure because this NPA bubble was blowing up and the Reserve Bank was going behind banks, for not having done due diligence or whatever. So there was a lot of pressure on them.
Right.
So
Right.
they did not wish to. So this was one experience which was there, and the kind of options that banks were giving us in return were more likely to get the client in the debt trap than get out of it. So so this was my experience, and like the only thing that happened was you keep on delaying and delaying and delaying the eventual. So finally, after 4 years, the bank agreed to the same terms and conditions, uh,
Yeah.
but that came after
Four
4 years,
years.
which the client
4
had
years.
already paid a lot of
Yeah.
interest, and
Yeah.
no principal has been paid back. But if
Right.
this long-term plan was agreed on in the first place itself, like 4 years
Yeah.
before, a lot of the
Yeah.
principal, not lot, but at least 10 to 20% of the principal might have been paid off by now. And
Yeah.
so the eventual interest that now the client would have to pay would have been less. So the bank
Right.
agreed to that now after the
Yeah.
corona crisis, because, but
Yeah.
before
Now
that,
it's a yeah.
they were just not ready to agree, and also there was a change in manager, if I may say so. So but but
That's one
these are
thing
the
that
problems
happens.
we face, that even if legally certain things we have at our disposal, if the
Yeah.
manager does not agree, or if there is, how should I say this, it's, it is like if you're dealing with people uh, who are scared, and uh, who are more likely
Absolutely.
to believe in superstitions. And
Yeah.
these, I'm not talking about religious superstitions, but
No, I get it. I
superstitions
get it.
of finance and law. So how to
Right.
deal with that, I don't know. So maybe if you can shed some light as
Yeah.
to, how to nudge people towards, hey, there is a provision in the
Yeah.
law, let's use that.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could shed some light on that, it would be
Yeah.
great.
So Kaustubh, you are a lawyer practicing in banking and finance.
Hi. So no, I'm not a lawyer. I I kind of represent the business, and I bring together ex bankers who have left the banking field, uh, and I kind of consult companies. So I bring together lawyers, I bring together ex bankers, and then I represent the client to the bank. So
Right.
when we're representing the client, we have the ex bankers to give us proof that, yeah, this has happened in other banks, like, and then you have lawyers to kind of put the legal, like, yeah, this is legally possible. and then we put forth our arguments, but then we are faced against a wall of superstition, like
Yeah.
no, no, this is not possible, this will not happen, and
Yeah.
you are dreaming and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So see, that is the thing, See, when it's, I mean, think of this from the in-house person's side of view also, right? Like you just said, they've been given targets and everything. Now, we may feel like it's superstition, but it's simply basically, again, sitting with just one piece of the puzzle. If they had a very clear idea of how the law, like you got together bankers, lawyers, your client, and yourself to put that whole thing together. That guy on his side, he has an understanding of one particular side. He doesn't have the whole puzzle again. So, whenever you are in that position, you will be very risk averse. You will not want to proceed. You will not want to, go ahead. You will restrict yourself, and you will act in a very, very restricted manner, because you don't have that side of the puzzle. You don't understand how the legal implication works, or what is likely to happen, or what can be the situations from the banker's perspective, that what is likely to happen in this case. Now you brought a lawyer, but that's someone from your side, right? The bank has lawyers, yes, costume, but the decision making is through for, the managers. So he has to get it. Now, if his lawyer says no, he will be it no. Okay, unless he has an understanding of it also to go beyond. So you can't, unless both of them, and then the lawyer also, if the lawyer doesn't get the finance side of the transaction, like how you got an ex-banker, okay, if he doesn't have that support, okay, then that moves out. They will, if the lawyer says no, it's no. It's like that. So because both of them have only the half side, so they are not able to, go or take or decide a risk, or decide really going further how you want to do about that. Lots of people in the bank side have this kind of situation, that I don't want to take the risk because I don't have the full idea of how this thing works. Right? That's one situation that people face. Yeah, there's someone, Samsung Galaxy. That's what the name shows. Can I know your name, please? I'll unmute you.
Can
Yeah,
you hear
please.
me?
Yeah, I can. I can.
Acha. My name is Advocate Shankar Pai.
Yeah,
Uh, I
yeah.
am I am a banker for 28 years and in legal practice about will for 17 years.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would like to talk about the NPS of the banks.
Yeah. So, okay. What about the FPA?
What happens? Normally, it is said that a banker is a person who
Yeah,
gives you an umbrella when it is sunny
yeah,
and takes away the umbrella when it starts raining.
yeah.
So
There
I would
are maxims like this. Yeah,
So a branch manager would not like to take risk and be a part of the scapegoat and hounded by the CBIs and vigilant department.
yeah,
So we could work on a mentorship system. You know what is called a mentorship. For every loan, there is a mentor.
okay.
He will be
You,
a
you
friend,
are doing
philosopher,
that.
and
You are
guide for
doing
the
this.
banker,
You are doing
for the
this, or you are
borrower.
suggesting.
Yes, friend,
You are.
philosopher, a banker for the borrower, and he acts as a bridge between the banker and the borrower.
Yeah,
Because what happens, the borrower sometimes gets into wrong things, which is unknowingly gets into wrong things by diversion of funds or whatever. And at that point of time, he's kept. There is hand holding by the mentor. The improvement can take place at the initial stage itself, so that things could be controlled. This is my small idea which I am having. I would like to share with you.
yeah. But are you using this right now? Yeah. Have you
I have
used this?
suggested to a cooperative bank in a sort of a have call. test a pilot project,
Right.
and based on this, it can go to a large borrowers.
And they
Sort of
accepted.
a pilot test stage.
And they have
No, they are
accepted.
yet to accept because this is a very big change and nobody like to accept it so
That is the
easily.
thing. That is the thing. That is the thing. So, like, I really want to deal with this because see, people are in these spaces like Kaustubh is saying, he's meeting with like, from the bank side, he's meeting with lots of people who are not very clear. And as he puts, like there's a wall of superstition. So, as I was talking to one of our faculties, he's fortunately here with us right now. Prabal, are you here?
Yeah, I am here. How are
Yeah.
you?
Hi, Prabal. So we have Kaustubh Sitkar here, and he has brought for the exact situation which we were talking about, and why people need structured knowledge. That is the thing that that becomes relevant here. So Kaustubh says that what he does basically is he gathers ex-bankers, lawyers, and his clients, and they actually make are enter into a negotiation with the bank, but there is a lot of resistance from the side of the bank. As in, there is what he describes it as a wall of superstition, right? So, guys, let me introduce you. Prabal Goel is our faculty for the banking and finance course, and Prabal is like 70% a finance guy and 30% a legal guy. So he is like understanding of the banking sector in incredible amount of detail. He works with lots of banks, NBFCs, and in this domain itself, he's been for a great period of time. So, Prabal, what do you remark to this? Like I was saying that because there is this piece of puzzle that each one of them is sitting with, and they can't piece together, and that's why they are always these covers and don't want to get into like domain of committing really anything that is beyond the letter.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, my experience of banking tells me that, banking negotiations tell me that, typically it is a battle of wills, the negotiation. So it's not as if that, people understand the severity level of risks while, arriving at, decisions.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, what happens is, in the end, decision is taken whether to concede or whether to retain a clause based on who wants the loan more. Does a relationship manager, is he under extreme pressure from his top management to give the loan to a particular business, or is the borrower also under extreme pressure to take the loan because he's not being able to, he it is not being able to get the loan from elsewhere.
yeah. So Kaustubh, that's what it is now. He's saying
That
that can the bankers have advice on this respect and how do they get them in sync? How do you get let's assume you need a loan more. How do you get them in the sync in this case?
I'm
Well,
sorry, what's the question again? I'm sorry, what's the question again?
like you said, it's a battle of weights as it's a battle of requirements. Assume that the borrower needs it more. Now, how do you get the bankers in sync with this?
When the borrower needs it more, actually, in the end, what ends up happening is that they'll agree to almost everything. Now, the problem with that is that, they are unable to then meet covenants.
Yeah,
And, whatever, you will have an operations team in a banking, you will have a risk team, and, you will have an operations team, and they'll keep raising questions of non-compliance all the time. So eventually, in the end, what ends up happening is the loan. If it doesn't become an NPA, even then the relationship gets hard. So
No, so
the borrower was not in a place to have, have the capacity to comply with those covenants in the first place. Yeah,
uh,
Kaustubh, you were saying something.
yes. So when I meant in sync was more like, so you have different, whenever you're dealing with the bank, you're not just dealing with one person. You will be dealing with multiple people. So you have to go and
yeah,
convince all of. So my question was more like how to get them in sync, because what will happen is different people will agree with you at different points in time, but they will never agree with you at the same point in time. So that convergence happening is like, it's like bringing the stars together, consulting with an astrologer and then trying to find out a very precise point in time where you can make your arguments to all of them and all of them will agree to it at the same time. So how to make that happen? So, I mean, apart from consulting an astrologer, is there any other way to do that? So that will be, that is what
I guess in the end, it sometimes I mean, what it needs is generally everybody kind of enters into a compromise to some level. So I'll so if, for instance, I mean, if you leave everything to a business guy, you would have very, very diluted governance, and if you leave everything to a compliance or even a legal guy, you will have so you have very, very strict covenants at all points in time. Now, I'll be very honest with you. If you leave two lawyers to negotiate an NDA, they'll never agree. Even an NDA, forget a loan agreement. So, while I actually think that it is good that there are more people in the in the team, and eventually, I guess it is the executive body which takes the larger picture in mind, and they agree to dilution of covenants, or they agree to strengthening of certain covenants. So,
Yes, but Prabal, what if all of so in order to get them all in one line, like how Kastub is saying, wouldn't they all have to be like aware of exactly how the things work? Like half of them they would be working in their own domain or in their own spheres. So they tick off or tick off.
that is definitely the best thing. I mean, that is utopian. In fact, if that were to happen, that would be great. Because right now, for instance, what I see is a normal legal grad does not understand ABC of finance. A finance guy always steers clear of legal documents because he feels that he doesn't want to be held responsible for any glitch in the document. And the same thing happens with others as well. So even right now that's what is happening. So nobody that consolidated body of knowledge.
Yeah.
I guess not many people have that level of that level of wisdom and knowledge in the field.
Right.
I guess it.
So now then the only solution when you are sitting with one side would be to bow down, like either or depends, like you said, like it depends on whoever has the more power or has the more weight in the negotiations will take the cake. That's how the way is. But if you are able to, if both the sides were able to get the whole part of it, probably things will be different. Even one of them, if they were able to get the whole part of it, the things will be different. So we're like actually talking about when someone is providing this practice, what are the things that you would need to shift? Like how this is the struggle that we are facing in dealing with banks. Okay, so we like people who are in the outside don't know how the internal mechanisms for them work. How do their agreements work? How do their internal part works? What exactly are the things they are really regulated by, and why they're so scared to move in certain domains? Okay, and the people who are the bankers, when they are weighing, like you said, they want to steer clear of particularly the risk guys, like you were saying, would want to steer clear of the agreements, and they don't want to have any role to play if there's anything that happens inside the agreements, the legal agreements that are entered into with the borrowers. So that is one shift or one gear that someone would want to take, that you would want to know or want to get a clear idea about the other side as well. You really want to know how the other side functions, things, what are the things they consider, or what are the factors they consider, because you don't have the view of the other side and you want to get that. Okay, that is one part of the thing. The other part of the thing is or the other shift or the change that people would want is, particularly from the consultant side, like Kaustuv or like Mr. Shankar Pai, if they are dealing with, is to get an idea of what are the changes that are likely to happen going down with the changes in economy. That is one thing that you have to be very clearly aware of. Like you might have been working in one particular area before, right? But as the economic situation changes, you might want to have a view of other part of or other section of the area. Same in the banking and finance field itself. So when it's in boom, let's say project finance would have been really relevant because you could have a lot of manufacturing projects and you had people put money into them and everything was functioning oiled up and very nice and well. But when it changes to a recessionary mode, then you have to focus on the recovery and restructuring area because that is what is suddenly going to be the relevant part of it. So this shift is you have to be able to shift the domains or be aware of both the sides depending upon what is the kind of work or what is the likely work that's going to come up, right? So that is something that you have to be, and like I was telling for the business owners, if the banks uh, are from the point of view of the borrower also, there can be disputes or there can be issues which crop up. It's not only that the lender always has issues with that, and largely they will have like recovery related issues or issues where they have to kind of work up or restructure the loans. But from the borrower's perspective also there can be issues which crop up, right? So those are also other things or shifts that you would have to make or you would have to learn in order to be able to shift gears as required or change as required depending upon the function. Even people inside would have to gear up accordingly, right? So that is the thing or that is the shift that you would want to make. Okay? And you really want to get a structured way to learn this because you don't want to naturally in such situations you don't want to learn come out of a bad experience because that is not what anyone is looking for. You don't want to fail on some or any transaction at all and learn by doing that. Okay, so learning on the job in this domain can be like really risky or really questionable. What do you think about that problem? Learning on the job in the banking and finance domain. I think he's not in. But like just think of it, you want to have a structured knowledge before you
Huh?
go.
One
So you don't want to get into that. Okay, people, there are loads of people who really want to have the understanding of how it works, and they don't want to get it, or they don't want to do it on the job, or they don't want to do it where they have one failed transaction or one failed deal with someone. That's why structured knowledge becomes really relevant. Okay, so that is something that I wanted to put before you or deal uh, you know like Prabal was saying, the struggle that people face, that is how you can actually go about it. So you would have to, first of all, know that this is one part of the puzzle and that there is more, and understand how where the other side is coming from. And second is you would have to move towards really getting a structured knowledge of how the whole thing works, right? And third is that you should be able to shift gears or from one side to other side depending upon how the economic cycle is working, how the business of the institution is working if you're inside it. Okay, you must be able to shift from, let's say, an understanding of, if I give you an example of, I was talking to one of the persons who is a recovery agent, right? Now this guy wanted to know two things really badly. He is a recovery agent, so he has very clear idea of the DRT processes and SAR facing and all of this. He has a very money suits. He has an idea of all of this very clearly, but he has no clue of IBC. Okay, and he has no clue of how the agreements in the beginning when the facilities are given work. So like if he wants to go beyond that area, then there are these limitations that he faces. So there's a box again within which he is operating, right? So you should be able to shift, and in order to be able to shift, you must be able to have a structured knowledge of how things work. When you are providing services, particularly, you should be able to move gears into the different parts depending upon the situation and depending upon how things work. Otherwise, this is an area which can be relevant at all points of time because of this. Okay, so it will be relevant at all points of time if you are able to change and move your services or move your way of functioning to something that is relevant at that particular point of time, right? So and there can be, I don't believe there can be anyone better to give an example of this than Prabal himself, right? So Prabal is, like as I said, one of the faculties of a banking and finance course, and the reason he is able to get this complete view of the thing is that he has dug deep into and acquired real structured knowledge of how he's researched the things completely. He's had that kind of network who would give him that inputs, but in one way or other he's acquired that structured knowledge of being able to get the entirety of the transactions of how things work from the borrower's perspective, from the banker's perspective, from the service provider's perspective. Okay, so like if you're in that sphere or if you're in that zone, you would be one of the very few people who understands the whole thing. Okay, and technically that would put you in a situation where you are able to serve where you are able to cater to a lot of different kinds of clients because of your complete understanding of the transactions and of how they are structured, how things work, right? So that is the thing that we can give, and he has played a very active role in curating this course for this specific reason, right? That because there is this gap or there is this struggle which we have identified and people face it. That is the reason we have this course in place, and we understand that there need not necessarily be lawyers to it. We understand that there can be lots of people who are in this zone who want to clear this gap or who want to understand this gap. So he has helped in creating this course. He's also a faculty with this course. So like that is the example that I can give of someone who actually pieces together the entire puzzle, right? So if we move a little bit forward, then what again should you do? Pavel, would you like to say something of why you joined, curated, or why you want to deal with this course? I'll unmute you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So, I personally think that this course would help a lot of people. One is, one is definitely the business people. Now, when I say business people, I mean the business origination side of bankers. Now, typically, the kind of problem that these people face is, before the loan is disbursed or even the loan is structured, they want to know, what are the type of, restrictions that, what are the type of restrictions that they would want to, they would want the borrower to be subject to. The second type of people, for instance, in my career, I have associated myself very closely with, people in credit appraisal departments, and their constant refrain is that, today when I look at documents from a credit appraisal point of view, I have no idea as to what is it that I am reading and what is it that I should focus, because, I don't have enough time to read 70-80 page article, 70-80 page agreement, and to make sense of it, especially when it is full of archaic language and jargon, which we call legalese.
Yeah.
So, apart from these, there are operations, people in operations also who might want to, who often, often have to oversee the execution of loan documents as to, what they should do. For instance, very often the the operations department, what they do is they simply seek a checklist from the legal team. And if the legal team, does a mistake, and see, I'm not talking about retail loans where the operations tend to be very same. You will have
Yeah.
one checklist
Yeah.
and you don't deviate from the script. But
Yeah.
in case of larger ticket size loans, what happens is that you will have bespoke loans for every transaction. You would have bespoke
Yeah.
documents for every transaction. Therefore, you would have
Yes.
bespoke
Yes.
operations for every transaction.
Yes. Yes.
So
That's where
that
like
is where it is also a part of again, apart from these three, there are many people who want to understand legal process simply because they may want to be entrepreneurs themselves. So today, for instance, if you look at our country, given the size of our country, there are many people who want to set up some kind of small NBFCs and small private equity, debt equity kind of organizations. So these days, I've been hearing a lot of people who are, who have set up small debt equity funds with sizes of around 10, 20 crores. But for them, even a 10 lakh loan is a very large loan size. Because
absolutely.
it is all relative in the end. It is all proportionate in the end.
Absolutely, like it depends on the size, like it depends on your level of activity or your level of business, how relevant it is to you.
And equity funds and even debt funds for that matter, they are, they can be. Now, I'm not advocating that they should be, but they can be a way to govern several businesses without actually starting up the business yourself. What happens is that typically what many equity fund houses, what they do is they enter into management agreement to govern a business.
Right.
So what happens is that there, for instance, they would also like to know as to whether certain risk in the business is enough for me to recall my loan or not, and what is the severity of the risk. So definitely not all risks are same.
Yeah.
And this is something which even lawyers need to understand, that all risks are not same. So if you
So
ask,
it's not even only banking or NBFCs. You are extending it here to like equity or other funds as well, debt funds as well.
yeah, typically
People
see these,
working
yeah,
in
so yeah, we tend to ignore these people in the discourse on financial system, while simply because they are not governed by RBI, but they are doing the same function while being governed by SEBI.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
debenture, in other words, is a loan, and while whether you call it loan or you call it securities, in the end, the net effect is the same.
Yeah, absolutely. So
And what
Prabal Kaustubh has a very interesting question, and I want to deal with this. I really want to deal with this. Kaustubh question is that is there any other way, really, other than to learn on the job? Like, so, well, like possible.
actually, yeah. So, for instance, on the job learning, the problem with on the job learning is that first of all, it is not structured, and sometimes it is very organization specific.
You have to face an embarrassment where you actually uh, make like errors and all. There is an embarrassment that you would have to face,
Yeah.
which many people would want to, right?
I
So
mean, I wish, yeah, right. Yeah, actually, if I were to answer Kaustubh's question directly, that right now, yes, people are typically learning on the job. The overwhelming way people learn is on the job, and then it becomes very organization specific. And when they move to other organizations, they are not able to reconcile themselves with the ways of other organizations in the initial period.
yeah, so I was answering Kaustubh's question here that there can be an alternative way to deal with it. Okay, everyone is saying voice is cracking.
Yeah, no, it's all right now. It was.
Yeah. So he's saying that we missed your answer completely. The answer is, Kaustubh, that in this, it's when we say structured knowledge, it is not the codes that are being dealt with. It is actually experience sharing from the likes of people like Prabal or Jayantika and all of that who have actually gone through a lot of the negotiations. So at least those things they can prepare you for. Like naturally, no course on earth will prepare you for anything and everything that comes your way, right? But there can always be a way to think of which is changed at particular point of time when you actually talk to people who have been through numerous negotiations, and that is something that we deal with, right? Does it answer your question, Kaustubh? So that is what we wanted. But this is, I understand that it's not a topic which really is a lot of people's favorite. But if taken up, this area can really be very fulfilling. It can be very lucrative. Yes, Kaustubh, it is available for Master Access students. You can take it up, right? So Master Access, for those who are in this webinar and are not aware of, is a way to have all the comprehensive courses of Law Seco available. But as far as banking and finance course is concerned, there is something that I can actually put forth before all of you. There is I can put the syllabus before all of you, and if you just want to have a glimpse or a view of kind of what exactly is dealt with, and how do we translate, like Kaustubh is saying, how do we translate the codes into actual applications? I can share one of the exercises that we have in this course, and you can have a look of that, and we can uh, we can then know of how that thing really gets done in practice, right? So I'm just sharing the link here for everyone. So this is one exercise which is a part of the course, which is being dealt with by the course, and you can have a look at. There's a link to that, and this here. Let me put the link of the banking and finance course. So you can look at how you would be able to shift the gears through this course. Like I was just explaining, you can move into the contract understanding of the banking contracts in one zone, and you can move to understanding the recovery, resolution related mechanisms, restructuring related mechanisms in the other zone, right? So that is something that is not very easily available, I must say. I can put the link of the course here as well. And if any of you guys want to reach out to any of us, me or Prabal, to understand how this thing works, what exactly are the things that you get to know of it, and what is the understanding that you will get, we can leave our contacts. Prabal, is it okay if I leave your email or something, or I can reach, or I can leave my number, and you can actually plan a consultation with Prabal to understand how this works. Okay, so this is my number. You can reach out to me and we can plan a consultation for you. Okay, guys, so that's about it. I think dealing with how to piece the puzzle together and gain from out of it. So anyone has any further questions? Anyone has any further questions? Thank you so much for attending the webinar. Thanks so much, Prabal. So, Shankar ji, do you have any question here? Should I unmute you? Yeah. Do you have any question, Mr. Shankar?
Yes, can I speak to you?
Yes.
Uh, are you? Am I audible?
Yeah,
Okay.
you are audible. Yeah.
Oh, okay. As a banker, I have worked under Mr. M.R. Umarji. He is the author of the DRT law.
Right.
So I can, if you agree, I can invite him to be one of the speakers for the course. He has devised the DRT law, Debt Recovery Tribunal Recovery Law. And when I was with the Bombay Management Association as an executive member, I called him to the BMA. He gave a full-fledged lecture on how the DRT law was drafted.
Yeah.
So you can take my number if you wish to take. My mobile number is 83697204414.
The number that I left here, Mr. Shankar, is if you WhatsApp your number and your details on that number, then we can
Okay. Okay.
Kshitija
Bye.
here requests compilation of courses available on Master Access. Kshitija, if you just WhatsApp me on the number, I'll send you the details. I will send you the compilation. Okay? You can just note down the number that I put 9167 125 177. If you WhatsApp me, I'll send you the compilation. Right? Okay, guys, thank you so much for being with us on the webinar and have a great day. Bye.